Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Bruce Kerns. Bruce Kerns is a retired Army veteran and a member of Central Ohio's woodturners, and he brings a great display of items that he's going to talk about beading and decoration.
All right, as he's already said, I'm Bruce Kerns. I am a member of the Central Ohio Woodturners. I've had several jobs there, from equipment manager up to president, and now I'm a lackey. They use me to work with basic tools, and the beginners most times refer them to me, and I'll help them learn how to mount stuff on the lathe, basic tools, basic cuts, get them started doing certain different things. So my experience goes all the way back to when I was in high school. My father worked with wood, and he made furniture, made stuff for my mother and my sisters, cabinets, shelves, etc. He got him a lathe when I was in high school, and this is what he turned out. One of several. This bowl's over 60 to 70 years old. He was a commercial artist by trade, and he would sit at the board and lay this out in detail, like you do, segmenting. Any segment turners in here? Okay. There's a large process. The majority of the process in segmenting turning is coming up with the plan to make it look, and then getting all the cuts specifically. And that's what he did, and then he would go down the basement and turn it out, okay? He never turned a green piece of wood. Never had a bowl gouge. So when I retired from the Army a long time ago, I found the Central Ohio Woodturners. My father had since passed, and they basically got me started, and I've gradually improved my skills, though I am still, by my standards, I'm still an intermediate turner. In some cases, I can do a little bit better than intermediate, but I have a passion for doing no one specific thing. We have many people in our club, and I'm sure there are probably a few in here, that they do nothing but bowls or nothing but pens. I don't do the same thing twice, unless I have a group of things that I want to make. Buckeye bowls is what I started out making, which is basically a box with a walnut hollow form with a maple lid on the top of it. Looks like a buckeye. And for some reason or another, nobody had seen one of those around when I started making those. I have no idea why. I mean, the state tree, etc. And the people in the club were, show me how to make that. It's a simple box, okay. But the skills that I am to show you today, beading process, are just that. They are a skill, one skill set that you can use to surface enhance any form that you make. The beading process, the basket weaving process, is a skill set that is basically a surface enhancement. The patterns delve back to Southwest United States with the Indians and Native Americans. If you want to research those, you can look it up online and find out exact patterns. They have several different patterns, and they had different bowls. They would weave different bowls for different occasions, holidays, births, etc. If you want to copy one of those, it's fine. Give them credit. They've been around a long time. Most of the time, people don't do that. They will take and come up with their pattern of their own, something that they like, the different colors, or they see a pattern someplace and that's what they want. So, but it is a surface enhancement. And how much surface you want to enhance will determine how crazy you are at the end, okay? If you're going to surface enhance something, where is it? Like this, doesn't take half as long as something like this, okay? I don't remember how many beads there are in that. Seems to me there was like 2,500, something like that. There's over 3,000 on the big piece, and this is the first full piece that I did. Has anybody in here done this? I know there's one gentleman that, okay, he saw me at the Buckeye Club, and so I have to make sure that I tell the same lies here that I told there.
I don't remember anything.
Okay, but I will tell you that the beading of this and the beading of this one takes a while. Beading meaning cutting the rows. The rows are the individuals that go around. Then indexing it for the individual beads, and then burning each of those beads, and then coloring each of those beads. Turning the form is the simple part. That's why this piece here, when I entered it in a show and it was rejected, it wasn't good enough, okay? They asked for a name and I said, this is obsession, okay? And I got that word, one, because it was an obsession once you started to finish that thing and make it look right. But the gentleman that I saw demonstrate this the first time, Mr. Meyer, saw him at the Kansas City show, Kansas City Symposium. This is from the Kansas City Symposium, if any of you went there. I saw him again in Pittsburgh. And then I took an online symposium during COVID with another gentleman. But I talked to him specifically at the Kansas City show, and I said, don't your eyes cross after you get down? And he said, you have to take a break, all right? And you do. You paint and take a break. And he says, but it becomes an obsession to finish. So that's why I named that piece, obsession. It's not a difficult process, okay? It's not a difficult process. You're not cutting that deep into the wood. The hard part about it is the dedication of the time and the planning process, all right? If you talk to segmented turners, getting all the angles cut and all the wood in the right colors, the right place, the right plate, that is the hard part. And then gluing it all up and taking the time to make sure it's all lined up just exactly right, and then getting there and making sure that you cut it and don't have a catch and have to start over or pull a ring out or whatever. So this is a surface enhancement to make something look better than a normal. I have not really done that many full pieces. And the reason, I'll go into later, the reason these edges are not beaded is because if you take and divide this ring here into 85 different beads, by the time you get down to this point down here, it is very difficult to see the difference in the 85 beads. All right? And that leads me to the first thing that you need to consider when doing this is a plan. All right? You need a plan. Segmented wood turners come up with a plan, okay, this ring, that ring, etc. Stack it up, this is what I'm going to look for. You need the same thing to figure out what kind of a pattern you want, so that when you start coloring all of those pieces, they match up. And you don't come all the way around and I'm missing a bead. And then you have to say, I have to alter the plan or alter my whatever. Now, there are some people, and I've had a couple of people in the club that say, well, why don't you just go random? Well, basically this is a random. I didn't have any pattern involved or in mind when I started this. This is one of the first pieces that I made. I just wanted to take and test it. And these beads, I just made the number of beads, and I remember myself saying, 8 basic colors, or 8 colors, make 16 beads. And you can double back and forth. And I didn't checker it back and forth to get a pattern and that will repeat all the way around. I just went with a swirl. But if you want a pattern, a specific pattern, like on the hollow form there, you need to have a detailed plan. Set it up. You set it up on graph paper. There are many places of publications that you can look to get ideas for patterns. All right, the most recent AAW journal that came out, I think it was this week that I saw it. It had several pieces in there where people have beaded. This is just the cover of the Woodturners catalog. That one, the individual did not only a platter, but he did a box in a similar design. And in this wood turning magazine, this is Myers wrote an article. So if you have the Wood Turners magazine or the archives, or can go into it, you can read everything you need to know about how to do it in here. But the first step is to have a plan, what you want it to look like, so that you can decide how many rows, how many beads, and how the pattern's going to match up. Otherwise, you can random color. I gave a junk piece like this. My granddaughter came over to see me and she said, "Grandpa, give me something to do." So I said, "Okay, here, color this." And I gave her the markers. I use acrylic paint, but you can use whatever you want. And so she colored and colored and colored and colored. Oh, that's really pretty. Okay, and then I finished it and gave it back to her. So she didn't have any pattern in mind. She was just for color, and there was pink here and green and orange and whatever. But you can do it on any surface. You can do it on side grain. You can do it on end grain. Little trick, but it can be done. And then most times what I have used recent is a feature, to highlight a feature. Doesn't take as much time, okay? What I normally do now is, unless I have a special thing that I want to do the full figure on, I use it as a feature ring, all right? And then, I'll come up with a pattern. It's a lot simpler, it's a lot quicker, because the beading process takes a large amount of time and dedication to do. When my wife was around, and my wife passed away 4 years ago, when she was around, she would come up with the ideas for me. Okay, the kids are having Easter eggs, so I made Easter eggs and I put a few rings on them. Okay, one of the things that I'll show how to do side grain with these with the beads is an Easter egg box. Bowls, platters, it depends upon how dedicated and how much time you want to put into it. Okay? And I brought this piece from my dad because it's very similar. The only thing is, you don't cut these grooves, you have to figure out these grooves on the plan, first thing. And so it's a tool that is actually helping you do whatever. You can cut, there is nothing that says that you have to cut all the beads the same size. You can have 2 or 3 rows at 1/8 of an inch. You can then make the next rings bigger, smaller, etc. You don't have to divide each ring the same. You could do this bowl with a beaded pattern and bead all of these as well with the different, as it goes around, as putting it on the index wheel and doing that. And then make it look almost exactly like this by coloring it, only it would be beaded. So, first step is to have a plan. Part of that plan is the form that you're going to use. Are you going to make it on a spindle? Are you going to make it on a bowl? Are you going to make it on a platter? You're going to put it on a hollow form. So you have to figure out, you use the different graph papers. On bowls, and platters, you'll need a polar graph paper because it's circular. All right? Now, that one that I just showed you, that's on the side. You could use this on the side, but if you're going to go down on the inside of the bowl or inside of the platter, you'll need to have something like this. You can get these online. If you go to Yahoo, Google, or whatever and say polar graph, you can go in there, it will spit it out for you and tell you exactly, you tell them how many rings, how many divisions in each ring, hit the button, bang, and it'll spit it out for you. And then you can color it in and do whatever you need. Okay? So you need a plan and a pattern, depending upon the form that you want. Now, you can do this on green wood. You can do it on dry wood. Most times I use dry wood. Or if I do some pieces, it's twice turned. This, however, one of the first ones I did, this was totally green. All right, this is a hollow form, totally green. And I did this. This one is the easy way to do a hollow form. Who knows how to do a hollow form the easy way? How? What? No, well, yes, that's easier, but this is even easier than that. You cut it in half. Cut it in half. One of those rings, one of those divisions on the rings there is where I divided this. And I hollowed out each half and stuck it back together. And where it met, that's where the first ring started.
Perfect.
Okay? So that's easy way to hide. All right? And if you look at it, you can find it in there. I know approximately where it is. But if you look at this real close, it was green when I turned it, and it elongated. It's not totally round. You can feel it in ones. It's got a little bump on it. So you can use green wood. The caution is you must put the rings on it before you let it dry. If you let it dry, you will never catch up to it. You'll never catch up to it. You'll be going like this, trying to get a ring on it. When it's green, put the ring. As it shrinks or expands, that ring will stay there, and you can burn it. But I would burn it while it's still green as well, because you'll never catch up to it once it dries. Now the indexing of it, that's easy, because you're doing that on the lathe, and the lathe's not spinning, and you can easily mark that and mic it. But for the rings all the way around, do it. If you're going to use green wood, do it while it's still green before it dries. So, you've got a pattern, you've got a form, you make the form, then after that, once you've decided that, then you start putting, you must put the beads on the form. Key to it is having as pristine a surface to bead as possible. You want to scrape it, sand it, get it as smooth as possible. Anything that will inhibit the finish, small little nicks or whatever, that tool will dig into and it will exacerbate it real quick. And once that happens, then it's basically you got to start and resurface that whole area. You want to take and get a good, clean surface, scrape it, sand it, and then bead that process. Okay? Now, I will go through more of that on the lathe. Once it's beaded, then you index it, and then you color it. That's the beading, beading, indexing, and coloring are 75 to 80% of the process. Now the beading tools, how many people have one of these? What do you use it for?
Haven't used it yet.
You haven't used it yet. You know what the proper name for this thing is? What? No, it's not a bedan. This is not. This is ground on both sides. This tool is sold as a beading tool. And it can be used as a beading tool. You can roll beads with this thing all day long if you're skilled. Most people use this as a very large parting tool. Okay? Skews an even larger parting tool if you use it correctly. Okay? But this is a beading tool. And you could make large beads with this. Okay? I did watch a demonstration of an individual who was doing a beading of a form. He wasn't going into the intricate divisions of everything, but he had a piece on there and he said, oh, well, we're going to put some beads on here. And he had a spindle gouge, a regular spindle gouge, and he just went, roop, 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 and he made all these series of beads right along the line. No two were alike, okay, but that was what he wanted. You can make beads with spindle gouges as well. To get them as uniform as possible, probably use one of these. This is the D-way tool. Here, I'll pass this one around. These are the Sorbies. They come in different sizes, 1/8 inch all the way up to, I think they may even have a 1/16 of an inch one. Basically a quarter, maybe 5/8. If they get larger than that, most people say just use a spindle gouge and you'll make the beads. Of those two, Sorby's more expensive. The D-Way's a better tool. If you're going to do this and you want, the D-Way is what I would recommend. The D-Way is a better tool to use. And I'll show you intuitively. Everybody sees the bevel on there and says, oh, this is how I'm going to use it. No. It's the opposite. That's the first thing that you have to learn, because I started out and I put the bevel on there and it just rips everything apart. So the D-Way is the better tool. So those are the tools that you use. To burn them, to burn the rings, How many's got the wire? Okay. Wire's easy to use. That's on the outside. On a bowl, as you start to get more down on the convex area, the wire doesn't stay in the hole, doesn't stay in the groove. I don't care how deep you make it, either with a skew or whatever, okay? It just doesn't. So you have to find something. You go online and there's all these advice, thick sandpaper, cardboard, etc., etc. Formica works. You go to the Home Depot store, and you go to where they're selling or the countertops, all right? And they have all these little Formica samples, okay? Pick you up 4 or 5 of them. That's all it takes. And you use that. You might have to shave it down with either sandpaper or take it if you have a grinder with a stone wheel on it. Don't use it on your CBNs. It'll screw them up. But thin them down so that they'll fit in that groove, and it will burn all day long, all the way around, and especially on the inside of a platter or a bowl. You can't get that wire down in there. And I struggled several times, but get the thick sandpaper, thick sandpaper, and you just keep. Doesn't work. Does not work. Then you index it. You need an indexing wheel. So you can make your own, or the one that I have, I'll show you up there, from Chef's Kits. Chef's Kits makes a good wheel. And then you just have to decide how many divisions you want to make. The first thing is a plan. I don't have a plan. Okay, I don't have a plan. But we'll come up with something. But I'm going to show you how to get the form, and then how to bead the form, and then how to index and burn the form. And I can use the markers to do the coloring a little bit if you want, or you can do the coloring. The coloring is just as difficult because you need to have that pattern right in front of you all the time. If you make a mistake on the way around and you come up to the end and it doesn't match, you have to go back and either erase or find a way to make it fit, because by that time you've already taken it off the lathe and it is out by itself. The way I have done it, and I have made that mistake a couple of times. With paint, I can paint over it, all right? With dyes, it's not going to work. You're not going to change the color unless you change the whole pattern or change the whole thing. So you've got to be very cognizant. With the markers, sometimes you can take, if you catch it early enough, you can take a X-Acto knife and scrape the surface and scrape that off if it didn't sink down too deep. But many times that's not the case. And when you scrape that surface, you change that profile of that bead. It's no longer as smooth as the others that are around it, and it will stick out. If the grooves are burnt and the grooves are deep enough, I've not had a problem with it bleeding when I put it on. I have had a problem in some cases when I finish. I finish mine with poly. You can use lacquer, you can use whatever. Some cases you might want to, whatever you use to color, check and see if there's something that would react. Poly, I use poly and it doesn't work. But I have had a case where I tried to do one with Sharpies. They'll bleed. They just, and they will run over the marks, the lines, okay? Some of your better markers, these are Blicks and a couple others, and you can get a good quality marker. They will, and you need a fine point and a broad point. Broad point to take and color the mass of it, and then a fine point to get down right next to that groove. No, I don't use any primer at all. I've not had a problem. First thing is you need to get a form, and I'm going to start with showing you how to take and put beads on the outside edge of the bowl and the inside of the bowl. Okay, before we really get started, you need to make sure that you obey all the safety rules. Okay, watches, I'm going to leave this one on, I'm not going to do that much. Rings, hair, goggles and or shield. I will have my glasses on so that I can see. That's a rolling, blurry mass right now. But these are ballistically tolerant, and then the shield will have. I'm not going to be taking off a large chunks of chips, so I'm not really worried too much about protecting my hands. Most times if I'm using and putting a green piece of wood on here, going through the bark, I will definitely I wear a protection on this hand, because the chips come flying off and they just smack me. Okay, so this is going to be a twice turned piece. This is a piece of sweet gum that I took. The tree came down. I turned it and put it in the box in September of last year, and it's been down and should be fairly dry. And I'm going to get the outside edge, turn it around, and get the inside edge done to where I can put a bead on it. A different one. Let's see if I can get this one a little bit closer. When you put your form on there, if you are going to bead the inside and the outside, you need to make sure that it's probably a good 3/8 thick. This thickness here. Because if the bowl and the beads match up, and when you cut the one on the outside and then you turn around and cut the one on the inside, you'll have a series of nice little hula hoops that will come off. And don't ask me how I know that, but if you want to make napkin rings they're very large napkin rings. Let's try this again and see if I can't. That's going to work. Now I want to get that as pristine as possible, so I'm going to scrape it a little bit just to get it. And I got a little bit of tear out up here at the rim, but that's probably going to come off when I turn it around. This is a piece of crabapple. I have found that your hardwoods are better. When I say hard, crabapple, apple, pine does not work that well. Open grain woods, oak, because while you can put a nice form on it, the beads will have a tendency, or they will have part of that open grain in them, and they won't be as smooth or look as nice. You can do the process on it, but it does not look as nice as on a hard piece of maple, crabapple. Walnut's kind of iffy. It's not open grain, but it's a little soft. Cherry, maple, crabapple, locust, those work the best. Okay, and most times when I look for a piece of wood in those, I look for something that's got some character. So it's a shame to even bead the whole thing, because you're hiding part of the character. So usually I would only do a feature, a little band here or there, just maybe an area that's not quite as pretty as I would like it. Come on. I'm going to relieve this corner just a little bit. One, because I don't want it to cut me. And two, when some people, when they make, if they're going to bead the entire thing inside and out, they will put a larger bead here at the top. They'll put a 1/4-inch bead or make a bead with a spindle gouge or whatever here at the top, and then run the other beads down the side. And the top bead they will crosshatch to make it look like an actual basket, like the baskets has the fibers that are weaved back and forth in a herringbone configuration. You use the burning tool, a straight burning tool, and basically work that in. But any of you who have made a bowl, you know that once you turn the outside edge of this thing, and this has been trimmed, when this thing is spinning, it's like a razor, and it will cut you to the bone very quickly. So I always try and take and maneuver and make that, try and relieve that edge so that I don't cut myself very much. I've done that more than enough. Now, see that's not bad now. Okay. run out of bevel so I can use a stubby gouge. I use my fingers on the outside of this. When you start to wind, it's because it's vibrating. You'll get the little checkering on the inside. You take and go very light and very slow. You can reduce that amount as much as possible because that checkering doesn't sit well with the beads. Okay, there's one little ridge in there, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm not going to do the full piece anyway. So, questions so far? Everybody's done this before, right? That's the easy part. Okay. Now, here's where your pattern, and you look for your pattern. You can measure this and figure out, according to your pattern, you would have to measure this and see, okay, I need for it to be X to be able to have a certain number of beads to fit in there. Like I said, we don't have a pattern. I'm just showing you how to put the beads on there. So you can start by marking a line. Okay. So where you want the first one to start, if you want to start it all the way up here, you could. Okay? Then you want to make sure that the tool rest is pretty much parallel. And you can see that it's not quite round because of this one area, and that's right here, because the pencil did not touch all the way around. So we need to take and make sure And what Mr. Myers says is the easiest way to do it is to do them in sets of 3 or sets of 5, your choice. You can put a line on there as to where you want to start. You can even use a skew to get you started if you want. All right. The key is the 2 points on this tool. 2 points on this tool. And you want to take and put 1 point on in and then roll it slightly till you engage the other point. that will mark your beads down the line. Once you mark 4 or 5, then you come back and you complete those beads, and then from the last bead, you mark another 3 to 5 and go from there. So that's what I'm going to do. I put the point in, and I'll roll it to mark the other one. And then a point in that, and roll it to the other one. Okay. So that's the beads that I can put on there. Now, then you go back to the beginning and you engage both the points, and you very gently put pressure and lift the handle slightly and rock it back and forth until you start seeing shavings come across the bevel. And you can see the wood is in the concave of the tool, making the bead. All right? Like that. You don't want to go too far, because if you start engaging this as a cutting edge on the top of that bead, you'll end up flattening it out. And if you stop it, you can take a look at the bead, and you can see whether it looks round all the way around or not. Okay? Once you have finished one, then you just continue to go down the line. And I look over here with the tool engaged, and I can tell by the surface over here when the bead is getting round the way I want it. As I understand the question, is just complete one all the way around, and then we'll go to the second one rather than mark 5 and then go from there. As I remember Mr. Meyer saying, it gives you a plan and it slows you up. This process, doing this, you don't want to go fast, all right? Because if you try and take too much or do it too fast, you end up screwing up the bead, or the ring is what you have right now, is basically a ring. And then you're left with either turning off that piece again or turning the whole surface down and starting again. And if you've already sized this to the size that you want, you're stuck. So I'm not saying that you couldn't do it that way, but I think, as I remember, his reasoning or his thought was that in doing 5, you're going to slow yourself up and not try and press yourself and ruin the surface of these 5 here. It gets more intense when you're on the inside and you're going all the way down in the very, very bottom. In many cases, depending upon the pattern that you want, you may either decide not to take and bead that process at all. Example being that the top and the bottom of that egg over there, it was going to be worthless for me to even go in there and ring that. Or if you do ring it, you basically paint the whole ring the same color. But it's a good question. I only surmise that was his reasoning. It slows you up. You don't want to speed or hustle this process because you'll end up tearing up the surface, and then you've got to basically go back and start all over if you want. Again, that's basically how you do the outside. Now we'll go to the inside. Before we do that, we can burn these. Anybody guess how we do that? This slant on this bowl will allow me probably to use this wire on all of these. If the bowl has a large concave turn on it, it doesn't always hold. Okay, now we're going to bead work on the inside. Okay, same process or similar process when you're talking about the inside. You want to try and get the tool rest in there as close as you can. You don't want a large amount of tool rest hanging over. You can mark them. And what you have to do, though, is you're going to be leaning over the lathe in most cases. So, you got to be careful. Once I've got them marked, then I'll go and I'll start to do the same thing. Now, you don't have any reference to look on the opposite side, so you're going to have to gauge by watching the shavings come across the bevel of the tool. About a 45, engage both the points, and then basically rock it back and forth. And you can stop it and take a look and see how you're doing, because it's difficult to tell whether there's a flat spot on it on the inside. You don't have this horizontal view. You don't have the. Once you figure out one, then you do the rest of them on the inside. Now, if you find one that you want to go back in and clean up a little bit, you can do that very carefully. Never thought about it. You could do that, but I guess you could do it that, reverse it so that you're cutting from this side. Yeah, you could probably do that. I mean, the tool cut, as long as the wood's coming that direction, yeah, sure. Probably would work. My simple brain just didn't think about it. Okay? All right? That's if you have the capability to reverse. And some lathes you don't have that capability, but yes. Okay, now we're going to burn those on the inside. So this is not going to work. No matter how much you try to hold that in there, it's not going to work. However, Formica strips, you can get those down at the Home Depot. It doesn't matter what color. Marbled works just really good. It puts a black line on here, but the white one puts the same black line, so it really doesn't matter what color it is, okay? And you'll notice some of them are thicker. In some places you'll find that you'll get a chip. It's like a paint chip that you go to the paint store, okay? Some of them are a little bit thicker. These I found are pretty good, and if you look, they fit pretty much right in the groove the way they are. If they're thicker, then you got to grind them down. And as you use them, they get smaller and smaller. So you use it until you can't put your fingers on it, and then toss the rest away and grab another chip. This one's gone through 6 or 8 forms, okay? Depending upon how much you press on it, is how much it's going to burn. It's the same process as with the wire. You watch it, it smokes, you pull it off, take a look and see if it's burned it all the way. Okay? Now, it does get hot, so if your fingers do get closer and closer, it'll let you know. Okay? And it will also put a burr. When it burns it, it will kind of peel back. So sometimes you have to take a file or scrape it on a piece of sandpaper or stone or whatever to get it flat again, thin enough to fit in here. But basically, question? Nope. Okay. That's how it works. This one's getting small. We're burning the fingers with. So I'm going to grab this one here. Now I found it easier to work deep in, and then come out. And they're actually easier to burn because you're getting more pressure this way. As you come out toward the edge of the bowl, and out here, you're having to get your hand inside the bowl on a small bowl like this especially. So now, that's side grain, end grain on the side of the bowl, and then side grain, end grain on the inside of the bowl. It works just as easy. You can do this is a box. I've done the prep work. Okay. You want to put a couple of beads on the outside of this. This is all side grain. All right? So you want to make sure that you've got a good, pristine form. Now, this is a box, so I'm going to take and hide where it divides, like on the big egg up there, okay? So I know that this is where my line is that divides it So I'll start my beads like that, either side. Working straight side grain, it's easier than working side grain, end grain. All right? Side grain cuts easier. You get a little bit cleaner bead. Once you get the beads, then you would complete the form as what you want the form to look like. Now you can't complete this all the way because you still have to index this and you still have to have a way to mount it to the lathe. And that's what this end. This being the cap to the box or whatever, you could do this as long as it would stay on there. I'm not sure it's going to stay, but this way I can at least get part of the form. And I'm going to take one of these beads off. And roll this back in. That's just a preference of mine. To take and make it not as sharp. You need to burn these, okay? We'll burn these the same way. These are all going to be easy to burn with the wire. Now, the one where you have the box is divided, you gotta be a little careful, not go too far. You'll burn your tenon that you have. You'll burn the tenon that you have holding the two together. You'll burn it off. Now, I'm looking at the surface of these beads, and they're not as good as I would have liked. I didn't quite get the surface, this surface here, as smooth as I want. They're a little rough. So in that case, I could go back and try and smooth them out a little bit with the tool, but you have to be very careful. Usually you want to do this in one pass. And I got in a little bit of a hurry. They're a little better. There's still a couple of nicks in there that I'm just going to have to live with. Now, the next step after you've got your form and you've put your rings, you need to index it to make the beads.
Right at the center line?
No, I'm above center.
Above center.
I'm above center. All right? I am above center. The tool rest is about on center, and then I'm slightly above center when I have this thing in there. Okay? Okay. So the next step is to index this. You can make your own. You can make your own, but this is what is an index wheel. If you don't want to do it this way, you can take and measure the circumference or measure the diameter and multiply it by pi and come up with a number, and then divide that by the number of segments that you want, and then you can take and measure that around the outside edge of this and make your little marks. This is a little bit easier. So all the hard math has been done for you with this chef's kits. As I remember, seems to me it was like 60, 70 bucks, maybe more now, but okay. This, and they also sell, what you have to have is some way to take and keep it indexed. Oops, wrong way. You have to have some way to be able to keep it from moving once you have. Come on. Yeah, evidently the one way, the ways are a little bit skinnier than the ones from my Powermatic, because this doesn't want to fit. Well, I'll make it work. That'll work. So we're not going to go too far here. Chef's Kit sells the index wheel and a stop, or whatever you want to call it. Seems to me the price was more than what I wanted to pay for it. But you basically have to take and be able to pin this wheel so that when you take and make the line and then move to the next line and then next line, okay? And so I basically worked up a little, all this is just a bolt that will fit inside these pins, and it locks you down. You also need a platform, and I'm not sure my platform is going to fit. All right, well, okay. Now, you want to make sure your platform is close to center line. and then a marker. Now, I have, Chef's Kit also sells an adapter for their platform that holds the beading tool. I'm in the process of trying to make mine. The whole process, if you bought all of that stuff, it was a couple $100. You can make basically a piece of wood that this will jam into, and you can connect. And when you, instead of just marking them like I'm going to do today and then taking it off and burning them by hand, you can take this straight to there and burn them all the way, as saves you some time. The caution is you want to make sure that you don't skip a hole, because if you burn it, then you're going to screw up your pattern. If you burn it, skip a hole and burn it, you've screwed up your pattern. You're going to have to readjust. If you do it in pencil, you can erase it and go back. All right? So on this one, for simple terms here, let's just make this one, this index wheel, I can go from 2 to 192. All right? No, the process here is pretty easy. I use a hexagon pencil so that I have a flat surface resting on a flat surface, and it's easy to mark beads all the way across. And I'm in this hole here. This is on the inside of 56, so if I want to take and make, say, let's make 14, 56, I'm going to drop 4. So 1, 2, 3. And I put it in that hole, and I mark. Okay, I also have come into the habit of holding on to this and marking the hole that I pull this pin out with my finger when I move to the next hole. That way I can make sure that I count the proper number. All of the holes on here, it's very easy to take and get. Miss it. Miss a hole, and then you're screwed up again. Just like I have already, I think. And that's the process. You go all the way around. Now, if you want to mark the inside and the outside the same, you've got to either pull the platform around, or mark them on the outside and then index, or put the index to where it is and then pull it around. And that's what I will do. Let's only go every other one here. You get the idea that it is a time-consuming process. Turning the form and getting it smooth and cutting is the easy part. That'll give you an idea. Okay, questions about that process? Pretty easy. I mean, all you have to do is know how to use a pencil. So now we come to the burning. You've got it, the form done. You've got it indexed. You need to remember what size tool you use to make the bead. These burning tools come in different sizes. This is an 1/8. You can use a 3/16. It will, you just go easy. It's a little easier to use. That's what I will use. Okay. I use a saber. There are all different kinds of burning apparatus out there, but they all basically work the same. You need a practice piece. So when you turn this on mine here, somewhere between 5 and 6 will work on this. And if it gets to be cherry red, that's too hot. It will smoke and whatever. You also need to be cognizant of the smoke, especially if you have some types of wood are toxic or carcinogenic, so you need to have a HEPA filter or whatever. If you're going to be burning a large quantity of it, even with the rings, you should have that. So I'll test this here on the foot. It needs to be just a little higher. And so you can see that it's starting to get just a little bit cherry red. So I'll turn it down just a tad. Then you anchor one of the points in one of the grooves and roll it. Anchor and roll. This process I normally do while I am watching football or basketball or something that doesn't require a large amount of attention, or talking to my wife, whatever, just. Isabel, that was a joke. I dearly miss my wife, but this is the laborious process of turning this into something like that. Now, on the inside, it's the same. Just pick a spot and go. On the egg here, or this form, and the side grain will burn. Yeah, you want to pass that around? You can pass that around. Side grain will burn just a little bit easier. The tool will go in a little bit faster because it's a little bit softer than the end grain. Basket illusion. This is PH21B-3/16 basket illusion. And I don't know whether I got these from Chef's Kit. I think Chef's Kit sells these as well. Okay. And you can get them in the variety of sizes, probably in the same sizes as the D-Way tool that they have. And the D-Way tool, like I said, that comes in probably all down, I think I saw a 1/16 of a bead, and then in other cases, it goes up to 1/4 inch, I know for sure. I don't know whether it goes much above 1/4 inch. So you probably figure if you're going to go above 1/4 inch, you're just going to use a regular spindle gouge or something. So you've got your form, you've got it beaded, you've got it indexed, you've got it burned. The next stop is to color it. And I'm not going to bore you with whatever pattern you want to put in there, you can take. That's why I say it's imperative, in my mind, to start with something that what you want it to look like, so that you know what pattern it's going to be, what colors you're going to use, et cetera, and you can make it fit everything that you want it to make it look like. The burning process is fairly quick. The painting process, I use acrylics with a small brush. With the markers, it may go a little bit faster, but again, the caution, you must make sure that you stay with that pattern. If you make a mistake, you're going to have to either erase or start all over or change your whole pattern. What I did, I learned the hard lesson on this one. The pattern repeats. As you can see, the pattern repeats all the way around. It goes all the way around. I started, and when you have two halves, I put the two halves together the way they're supposed to match, and I made one of these patterns all the way around so that I knew that way I indexed this to the pattern that I wanted. And then I could go back, and then I could take and work on halves at a time. And I would do a color and say, okay, all of these beads. And I would go through and take a small dab of paint and just tap the top of the bead so that I knew that was the color for that bead. And then after I had gone all the way around, then I looked at it and made sure it was correct. Then I went and filled in all the spaces. And once you get the first color or two down, chances of making a mistake are minimized, okay? But if you make a mistake, then with paint, it's easy. You can always backtrack and just paint over it. Well, using paint, I always start with the lightest color. Yellow on this. I start with the lightest color. It's easier to take, and if you make a mistake, cover up. I mean, black goes over yellow real easy. But yellow doesn't go over black. Okay? Now, if you're only going to do pieces of it, like on the egg there, that would be an egg, okay? Once you get it down to form, okay, you have the question as to whether you want to leave the top half that's not beaded, whether you want to leave that top half natural color. Many people will bead an entire frame like this and only color certain triangles and leave the rest of it the natural wood. It would look very nice in here because of the character of the wood. If you got a bland piece like normal straight grain maple or something that doesn't have a lot of character to it, you might want to add some more color to it. So you can do the same thing on spheres. You do this, and then index that, and then twist it, and you can do this all the way around. any way you want to put the sphere, as long as you've got or make a concave jig to put it in there. My dad was a commercial artist, and I inherited all of his brushes. I do not know what he paid for them, but I know that there was a time when I went to clean his brushes, and I was summarily disciplined because I didn't clean them properly. So I imagine they were pretty expensive. They're not the dollar store variety, I guarantee.
Not Harbor Freight.
No, they're not Harbor Freight. The camel hair brushes work better. I think that they're made out of camel hair. I'm not sure. But anyway, if they're a good brush and they don't, after you use a brush once or twice, it starts to spread. You don't want that.